Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Manohar Kumar, Assistant Professor of English at Government College, Devgarh. Today, we are going to study about the poem Elegy written in a country churchyard, composed by Thomas Gray. In the previous lesson, we talked about Thomas Gray and his works and features of his poetry and transitional age. And today we are going to study about the introduction of the poem. Elegy written in a country churchyard is one of the great elegies in English literature. Gray was inspired to write this elegy by the sad and untimely demise of his close friend Richard West. This famous poem was begun in the year 1742 and finished in 1749. It was written or meditated in the churchyard at Stoke Pogs, where Gray's mother and aunt resided after his father's death. The feelings and thoughts expressed in these poems are permanent and universal. There is nothing exceptional here, for Gray is the singer of the humble, poor, neglected folk of the village. The poem has simple philosophy and a calmness of emotion. And in this poem, the poet laments and mourns on the loss of humanity, on the liberated forefathers and poor villagers in churchyard. So, this poem has universal thoughts because not particularly written on his relative or his friend. It is one of the 5 greatest English elegies. Elegy written in a country churchyard is one of the 5 greatest English elegies. Which are the 5 greatest elegies? The other 4 are Milton's Lycidas. The second is Shelley's Adonis. The third is Tennyson's In Memoriam. And the fourth is Arnold's Thyrsis. So, these 5 elegies are regarded greatest elegies in English literature. So, elegy written in country churchyard is one of them elegies. In the opening stanza of the elegy, the poet builds up an atmosphere of evening. The curfew is tolling. The herd is seen slowly winding over the lea. Lea means pasture. The ploughman is returning homewards, tired of his day's exertions. The landscape is fading in the deepening darkness, and the only sounds that break the stillness of this hour are the droning of the beetle, tinkling of the bells from the distant falls, and the occasional cry of the owl. So, in the in in the beginning, the poet describes the evening atmosphere. And then in stanza 4 to 7, the poet refers to the rude forefathers of the hamlet who lie buried in the village churchyard of Stockbox and who are now beyond recall. Neither the morning air laden with sweet smells, the twittering of swallows, nor the crowing of the cock will awaken them from their eternal sleep. So, no one can awoke the live-buried forefathers in the churchyard. No more will the housewife attend to their needs at home, and no more will children greet them on their return from work. So, here the poet regrets on the untimely and and unknowingly death of forefathers. The four stanzas that follow are written in a tone of moralizing. Let not the proud and the ambitious people mock at the humble lives and simple joys of these men, are belittle their unspectacular labors. All men are subject to death. Death is no respecter of high birth, worldly power, beauty, wealth. So, the moralizing tune can be noticed in this stanza. And the famous line of this poem, the paths of glory lead but to the grave. So, this is the famous quotable line of this poem. Every man have to die one day. The death is inevitable. So, every man have to die one day, whether he is rich, poor, and handsome, beautiful, etc. So, death is no respecter of high birth, and death doesn't discriminate anyone. For death, all are equal. So, the paths of glory led but to the grave. In the next four stanzas, another important idea is expressed in this poem. These men led obscure, unknown lives. They had no opportunities for education or for self development. The poor forefathers and the poor villagers who are lie buried in the churchyard and in the graveyard will be great men, would be great men, and but they had no opportunities for education or for self development. Their talent, abilities, and gifts found no scope for outlets or expression. They had no opportunities to express their abilities, their talent. So the poet laments here extreme poverty made impossible for them to acquire knowledge or to display their religious zeal or to cultivate the generous impulses of their souls. They lived and died unknown. They lived and died unknown like the many exquisite gems that lie in the depth of sea or like the lovely flowers that bloom and fade away unknown in a desert. Here the poet compares and uses similes the life of the liveried forefathers and poor villagers to that of the flowers who decays and withers in desert unknowingly, and the gems which are liveried under the earth, liveried in the earth. So the simile is used here. There might have been among them men someone who had the courage and fearlessness of John Hampden, someone with the poetic gift of Milton, or someone with the warlike and aggressive nature of Cromwell. So the poet here then give some examples of great men who who had done uh, great in their life, in their particular skill. So the poet says, in the forefathers and the poor villagers who are lie buried in the graveyard might be great like Milton and like Cromwell and like Hampden. So they had no opportunities to display their talent and their knowledge because of their poverty. And in the next stanzas, the poet refers to the humble tombstones on which the names and ages of the dead are engraved. And the concluding the epitaph, the poem concludes with the poet's epitaph written by himself. He refers to himself as a melancholy and scholarly person with a generous, sympathetic, sincere heart and willful confidence in Almighty God, in whose bosom he will rest after death. So, this poem is one of the greatest elegies in English literature, and in our next lessons we studied this poem stanza by stanza and line by line with detailed explanation. So this poem is important. So all the students will take it seriously. Thank you for today.